On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Grace Kelly, the Hollywood actress who became Princess of Monaco, died tragically on September 14, 1982, at the age of 52, following a car accident near Monte Carlo. While driving with her daughter Stephanie, Kelly suffered a stroke behind the wheel, causing her to lose control of her vehicle and plunge off a steep cliff. She died the following day from injuries sustained in the crash. Her death, both sudden and violent, reflected the fragility of life, even for those who seemed to embody glamour, privilege, and timeless elegance. Kelly's passing was emblematic of the era's fascination with royalty and celebrity. In the decades following her marriage to Prince Rainier III of Monaco in 1956, she had become a global symbol of fairy tale romance. An actress who traded the bright lights of Hollywood for the dignified responsibilities of a princess. Her death in an automobile accident echoed broader societal anxieties about modernity and mobility. Cars, symbols of freedom and progress in the 20th century, were also sources of sudden tragedy. The fact that her final moments came not on a stage or in a palace, but on a winding road, reinforced the universality of human vulnerability. The immediate consequences of Kelly's death were profound. Monaco plunged into mourning, and the global media treated her passing as the end of an era. Her funeral, attended by royalty, dignitaries, and Hollywood stars, was broadcast internationally, blending the worlds of cinema and monarchy. In the short term, the tragedy also placed intense attention on Princess Stephanie, who survived the crash but faced both physical and emotional scars, as well as public scrutiny. Kelly's death amplified her legend. Already an Academy Award-winning actress and style icon, she became immortalized in the public imagination as the embodiment of grace, beauty, and tragic destiny. Her passing deepened comparisons to other figures, such as Princess Diana, whose lives and deaths similarly symbolize the intersection of glamour, duty, and fragility. Kelly's legacy continues in fashion, cinema retrospectives, and the ongoing work of the Princess Grace Foundation, which supports emerging artists and performers. Her death reveals humanity's enduring fascination with mortality, power, and memory. Though death equalizes all, the way societies commemorate figures like Grace Kelly demonstrates how art, ritual, and storytelling preserve their essence. Through films, photographs, and memorial institutions, she lives on, not only as a princess or actress, but as a cultural archetype of elegance touched by tragedy. In this way, her memory underscores how we immortalize those who embody ideals larger than life, ensuring their presence in history long after their departure.
Patrick Swayze, one of Hollywood's most beloved leading men, died on September 14, 2009, at the age of 57 after a hard-fought battle with pancreatic cancer. His death was the result of natural causes, yet the drawn-out and public nature of his illness reflected both the fragility of the human body and the resilience of the human spirit. In a culture where celebrity often equates to invincibility, Swayze's struggle with a particularly aggressive and deadly disease became a stark reminder that even icons are vulnerable. Swayze rose to international fame in the 1980s and 1990s with films such as Dirty Dancing, 1987, and Ghost, 1990, both of which captured themes of love, passion, and loss that resonated deeply with audiences. His public battle with cancer, marked by remarkable candor and determination, echoed the values of perseverance and authenticity admired in that era. He continued to work during treatment, notably starring in the television series The Beast, 2009, which highlighted his refusal to let illness define him. The immediate consequences of his passing were profound grief and collective nostalgia. Fans around the world mourned not only the actor but also the roles that had become cultural touchstones. His death amplified the legacies of the films he headlined, reigniting conversations about Dirty Dancing's themes of class, independence, and romance, and Ghost's meditation on love and mortality. In this sense, his departure intensified the cultural resonance of his work, ensuring it remained deeply embedded in popular memory. Swayze's death also raised awareness of pancreatic cancer, a disease with notoriously low survival rates. His openness about his diagnosis and treatment inspired advocacy and increased funding for research. In this way, his passing shifted focus from Hollywood glamour to pressing medical realities, blending celebrity influence with public health awareness. His legacy reveals much about humanity's relationship with mortality, power, and memory. Death does not erase influence, it transforms it. Through art, performance, and cultural memory, figures like Swayze achieve a form of immortality. His image continues to live on in iconic scenes, Johnny Castle declaring, "Nobody puts baby in a corner," or Sam Wheat reaching across the boundary of death to declare eternal love. We immortalize Patrick Swayze through the enduring popularity of his films, the tributes paid by colleagues and fans, and the cultural shorthand his roles have become. His passing reminds us that mortality humbles all, but art has the power to transcend death, ensuring that stories of love, courage, and humanity endure long after the performer is gone. Irene Papas, the legendary Greek actress and singer, passed away on September 14, 2022, at the age of 96. Her death was from natural causes after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. While peaceful, her passing highlighted a broader cultural conversation of the modern era, the inevitability of decline, even for those once seen as timeless figures of beauty, strength, and artistic brilliance. In a world that often glorifies youth and vitality, Papas's final years reminded admirers of the quiet dignity in confronting mortality. Papas first gained international recognition in the 1950s and 1960s, with performances that embodied both ancient gravitas and modern sensibility. Her roles in films such as The Guns of Navarone, 1961, Zorba the Greek, 1964, and her unforgettable portrayals of tragic heroines in Electra, 1962, and Antigone, 1961, made her a cultural ambassador of Greek identity. She was not simply an actress, but a symbol of resilience, connecting Greece's ancient theatrical tradition with its post-war modernity. The immediate consequences of her passing were felt deeply in Greece and beyond. Tributes poured in from cultural institutions, fellow actors, and political leaders who recognized her as a guardian of Hellenic culture. For Greece, a nation that has long defined itself through its artistic heritage, Papas's death marked the symbolic end of an era that had exported Greek drama, music, and spirit to a global audience. Her absence amplified her legend, solidifying her as not merely an actress, but a timeless icon of national identity. Her death also illuminated the challenges of memory itself. Alzheimer's, the disease she battled, is cruelly ironic for a performer whose craft depended on voice, presence, and recollection. This contrast between her radiant on-screen power and her final years of fading memory resonated deeply with admirers, sparking conversations about the fragility of human identity in the face of illness. Irene Papas's legacy reveals humanity's dual relationship with mortality and immortality. While our bodies are finite,
The art we create allows us to live beyond death. Papas is immortalized in the haunting images of her Greek tragedies, in her commanding voice as a singer, and in the cultural memory of Greece itself. Statues, retrospectives, and festivals continue to honor her, ensuring she is remembered not just as an actress, but as a vessel of cultural continuity. Her passing reminds us that while time claims every life, memory and art preserve the essence of greatness. Michael McGrath, the beloved Broadway actor and Tony Award winner, passed away on September 14, 2023, at the age of 65. His death was reported as sudden and natural, a reminder of how mortality can come unexpectedly, even to those whose lives seem vibrantly full. McGrath had built a career that celebrated joy, humor, and music, themes deeply embedded in Broadway's legacy. His passing, while peaceful, highlighted the fragility of the performing arts world, where the loss of one performer can ripple through an entire community bound by collaboration and tradition. McGrath's death came at a time when Broadway was still recovering from the long shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic, which shuttered theaters and threatened the livelihoods of countless performers. His sudden absence underscored both the precariousness of live performance and the enduring resilience of the theater community. Colleagues and fans alike mourned his departure not only as the loss of a gifted performer, but also as a symbolic reminder of the era's challenges, how quickly joy can be interrupted, and how art becomes a sanctuary in moments of uncertainty. The immediate consequences of his passing were felt on Broadway stages and in tributes from peers who remembered him as a consummate professional. McGrath had starred in productions such as Spamalot and Nice Work If You Can Get It, roles that cemented his reputation for comedic timing and heartfelt delivery. His death amplified his legend by freezing him in memory as a performer at the height of his craft, one whose talent reminded audiences of theater's power to make life's difficulties more bearable through laughter and song. In reflecting on McGrath's passing, we see how humanity continually grapples with mortality through art. The sudden loss of artists often intensifies our need to remember them, not as figures of tragedy, but as vessels of shared emotion and cultural identity. We immortalize performers like McGrath through recordings, revivals of the shows they helped shape, and the oral traditions of theater, where younger actors carry forward their influences. His death illustrates how memory and legacy intertwine. While the body fades, the work lives on, echoing each time the curtain rises. Ultimately, McGrath's departure reminds us that mortality is universal, but so too is the human impulse to preserve joy, talent, and artistry against the passing of time. Through performance, remembrance, and commemoration, figures like him continue to live within the heartbeat of cultural memory. Janet Gaynor, the luminous star of early Hollywood and the first recipient of the Academy Award for Best Actress, died on September 14, 1984, at the age of 77. Her death was ultimately the delayed consequence of injuries she sustained in a horrific car accident 2 years earlier. In 1982, Gaynor, along with her friend Mary Martin, was struck by a drunk driver in San Francisco. Though she survived the immediate aftermath, Gaynor endured multiple surgeries and long-term health complications before succumbing. Thus, her passing was both accidental and tragic, a reminder of how modern dangers, like reckless driving, could abruptly claim even the most cherished figures. Her death reflected the challenges of her era in a poignant way. By the 1980s, Hollywood had become a far more expansive and commercialized industry than the one Gaynor had helped to shape during the silent and early sound periods. Her frailty following the accident seemed to embody the vulnerability of stars whose careers were often built on ethereal images of youth and vitality. Gaynor, once a symbol of innocence and romantic optimism in films like Seventh Heaven, 1927, and A Star is Born, 1937, became a figure who reminded audiences that even the brightest icons could not escape life's fragility. The immediate response to her passing was one of reverence and reflection. Obituaries celebrated her as a trailblazer, the first woman ever to hold an Oscar for acting, a performer whose expressive style had defined the transition from silent cinema to the talkies. Her death rekindled appreciation for early Hollywood and reminded contemporary audiences of the artistry that laid the foundation for modern filmmaking. While Gaynor had long stepped back from the spotlight, her passing amplified her legend by recentering her in the narrative of Hollywood's golden past. In broader reflection, Gaynor's death illustrates how humanity navigates mortality through memory and commemoration. We immortalize figures like her not only in the films that preserve her delicate yet powerful performances, but also in the ongoing cultural rituals of award ceremonies, retrospectives, and biographies. She continues to live in the public imagination as the archetypal Hollywood ingenue, her legacy preserved in celluloid. Her story reminds us that while death claims every life, art offers a form of immortality, ensuring that talent, beauty, and the human spirit endure long after the final curtain falls. Henry Silva, one of Hollywood's most distinctive character actors, passed away on September 14, 2022, at the age of 95 in Woodland Hills, California. His death was from natural causes, marking the end of a long life and career that had spanned 6 decades. Unlike the often tragic or abrupt deaths that define so many Hollywood legends, Silva's passing reflected a quieter reality, the natural closing of a chapter for an actor whose legacy was built not on leading roles, but on unforgettable portrayals of villains, anti-heroes, and complex outsiders. Silva's death reflected the values and challenges of his era in subtle but meaningful ways. Born in 1926 to Sicilian and Spanish parents in Brooklyn, Silva came of age during a time when Hollywood often typecast actors of ethnic backgrounds. He made a career out of playing criminals, gangsters, and heavies, appearing in classics such as Ocean's 11, 1960, alongside Frank Sinatra and The Rat Pack, and later in gritty crime dramas like The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. His face, lean and sharp, became synonymous with danger and intrigue. That he lived to an advanced age and died peacefully underscores the contrast between the violent figures he so often portrayed on screen and the dignity of his real life. The immediate response to his passing was a wave of tributes from fans and cinephiles who remembered him as one of the last surviving members of the original Ocean's 11 ensemble. His death symbolized the fading of an era in Hollywood history, the closing of the book on the Rat Pack's golden age and the hard-edged crime films of the 1960s and 70s. For many, it amplified his legend as a stalwart of genre cinema, a man whose presence elevated every project, even if he was not always in the spotlight. Silva's death reminds us that memory and immortality are not reserved only for marquee names. His career reveals humanity's fascination with power, menace, and moral ambiguity, and his characters endure because they embody the darker sides of human nature that art dares to explore. We immortalize figures like Silva through the films that continue to circulate, the retrospectives that frame his work in context, and the appreciation of audiences who still marvel at his ability to make menace magnetic. In this way, Silva's death underscores how cinema itself functions as a vessel of memory, allowing actors to live on long after their final curtain call. Juliet Prowse, the South African-born dancer and actress, passed away on September 14, 1996, at the age of 59 after a battle with pancreatic cancer.
Her death, the result of natural illness rather than accident or violence, carried a poignant resonance. Prowse had built a career on physical vitality, elegance, and movement, yet in her final years, she was confronted with a disease that slowly eroded the very energy and grace that defined her artistry. Her passing reflected the universal challenge of mortality, that even figures who seem larger than life through their talent and beauty remain vulnerable to the same human frailties as everyone else. Prowse's career had flourished during the 1960s, when Hollywood and Las Vegas increasingly celebrated glamour, spectacle, and the merging of film with live entertainment. She starred in musicals like Can-Can, 1960, where her dancing caught the eye of audiences and critics, and performed alongside Elvis Presley in G.I. Blues, 1960. In Las Vegas, she became a marquee name, embodying the city's evolving identity as a hub for showmanship and bold performance. The fact that her death came from cancer, a disease that saw rising public attention in the late 20th century as both a medical and cultural struggle, mirrored broader societal anxieties about health, mortality, and the limits of science in the face of aggressive illness. The immediate consequence of her passing was a wave of remembrance from both Hollywood and Las Vegas communities. Fans and fellow performers recalled her as one of the last true stars of the golden age of musical dance performance. While her career had not maintained the same trajectory of global superstardom as some of her contemporaries, her death served to amplify her legend by reminding audiences of the unique place she held, a bridge between classic Hollywood musicals and the modern entertainment industry's fascination with live spectacle. Prowse's death reveals the fragility that underlies even the most glamorous lives, reminding us that fame does not shield anyone from the inevitability of decline. Humanity immortalizes figures like her through film archives, recordings of her live performances, and the enduring admiration of those who celebrate dance as both art and memory. In reflecting on her life and passing, we see how mortality transforms artistry into legacy, ensuring that Juliet Prowse's dazzling presence on screen and stage continues to inspire long after her final bow. Norm Macdonald, the Canadian comedian and writer, passed away on September 14, 2021, at the age of 61 after a private 9-year battle with cancer. His death was the result of natural illness, but its circumstances reflected much about his character and the values he upheld throughout his career. By keeping his diagnosis hidden from the public, Macdonald chose to face mortality quietly, refusing to let it shape his legacy or define how audiences perceived him. This decision highlighted his commitment to comedy as an art form meant to stand on its own, untainted by sympathy or spectacle. Macdonald rose to fame in the 1990s as a cast member on Saturday Night Live, where his dry delivery and fearless approach to satire made him a standout, especially as anchor of the Weekend Update segment. He became known for his sharp wit, unflinching honesty, and an often countercultural resistance to trends in comedy. At a time when comedians frequently sought approval or adapted to mainstream tastes, Macdonald embodied an era of performers who valued integrity of voice over broad appeal. His death, quiet and unannounced until the end, mirrored this ethos of understatement and authenticity. The immediate consequences of his passing were waves of tributes across the entertainment world. Fellow comedians, from Adam Sandler to Conan O'Brien, emphasized not only his skill, but also his influence as a comics comic, someone who prioritized the craft of humor above fame. Fans revisited his legendary talk show appearances, where his unpredictable timing and absurdist turns became part of his mythos. His death amplified his legend, not by shifting the trajectory of history in a political or cultural sense, but by solidifying his reputation as a singular figure in comedy whose work gained new weight in retrospect. Macdonald's passing illustrates how mortality reframes artistic contributions. It reminds us that humor, often considered ephemeral, can resonate across generations when paired with honesty and originality. Humanity immortalizes figures like Macdonald through recordings of their performances, the retelling of jokes that outlived their context, and the influence they leave on future artists. In his case, memory and laughter are intertwined, his legacy sustained not by monuments or portraits, but by the echoes of his voice, still making people laugh long after he is gone.